2024.
You're giving it something.
The agendas are at the end. No. Okay, I'd like to call to order the Personnel Committee. This is August 29th. I'm Lynn Lakakis. And I'm going to ask Rebecca to call the roll.
Sure, Madam Chairwoman. Ms. Lakakis?
Yeah.
Ward?
Here.
Ethier?
Here.
Fine.
Here.
Ray Joyce is excused. Kuhn?
Here.
Simpson? Drake?
Here.
And Grimm?
Here.
You have a quorum.
Thank you. I guess we'll begin with approving the previous meeting's minutes.
Make a motion for the minutes.
I have Mr. Kuhn and a second from Mr. Ethier. All those in favor? Any opposed? Motion passes. Okay, next is number 2, 24-216, amending the rules and regulations for Albany County employees regarding health insurance benefits for retirees, and that has been tabled at request of the sponsor. Number 3 is 24-419, public hearing on proposed local law K for 2024, which is a local law of the County of Albany, New York, creating Chapter 202 of the Albany County Code, prohibiting the use of employment, promissory notes, and other similar provisions. I do not see the sponsor here this evening. so
This
I'm
was
guessing-
tabled at law for some rewrites. So
Okay, so we'll take it as tabled at the request of the sponsor. And so then number 4, which is the actual law, will also be tabled pending public hearing and request of the sponsor. So, current business. Number 5, approving a collective bargaining agreement with the Department of Residential Health Care Facilities and 1199 SEIU Shaker Place Rehabilitation and Nursing Center Collective Bargaining Unit and amending the 2024 Albany County budget. We have tonight Mr. Mark Olson and Mr. Sean Dillon from the nursing home.
Thank you, and good
Welcome.
evening. So our goal for this agreement was to increase our wage and benefit package to be commensurate with the local market. My number one priority is to meet our own staffing goals necessary to provide best patient care and in turn meet the New York State staffing mandate. So I'll go over the major points of the agreement and answer any questions as we go. So the term for this agreement is January 1st, 2024 through December 31st, 2027. One of the sections, Article 2, Section 1A. In September of 2022, the worked hours of the staff of the nursing home were increased from 37.5 hours per week to 40 hours per week. The reason for that was to help achieve meeting the state staffing requirement. Unfortunately, it really didn't move the needle at all, and it only, I think, upset the staff. So in this agreement, we're going to go back to a 37.5-hour work week. The reality is most staff are already working 40 hours already, and this works better, I think, for the agreement, and this is an industry standard. Article 7, the probation period, currently at 26 weeks. The agreement was to decrease that to 90 days.
Mr. Olson, will you excuse me for a second? Can the gallery try to keep it to a low, dull roar? Thank you. Go ahead.
Thanks. Article 11, shift differentials for the evening and night shifts, currently at 86 cents per hour. This contract will increase that to $1.50 per hour. And weekend differentials will be reinstated after being eliminated in 2014 to $2 per hour for all hours worked during weekend hours. Again, these are pretty baseline industry standards. Article 18, the agreement was to reduce the maximum number of accrual days that could be taken from an employee because of a disciplinary action from 30 days to 15 days. Article 19 changes personal days from 13 to 4, so it's net minus 9 days, but sick time, we're going from 0 days to 10 days. So rather than 13 total days, there are 14, but it gives the employee more flexibility in how they use that time. Article 20, we're adding Juneteenth as a recognized holiday. Appendix A is when we get down to the dollars and cents of the hourly rates for the employees. This contract has a provision for the 4 years of 3% per year. The one difference is that in the first year, because we went from a 40-hour work week to a 37.5-hour work week, the goal was to keep their weekly pay the same. So an adjustment of 6.7% will be made to their hourly rate it makes this a budget neutral proposal, but keeps the employee whole with regard to their weekly paycheck. In addition to that, the hourly starting rates are changing. Just as a matter of context, I'll go over a few of them. A CNA hourly rate is currently at $17.16 an hour. This increases that to $20 an hour. An LPN is currently at $24.63. This goes to $27.75. The majority of our entry-level staff, dietary, housekeeping aides, etc., currently at $15.05, will be going to $16.25. And we believe this will significantly increase our ability to recruit and retain staff. The longevity payout currently, the goal of the county is to set the new standard that if you're there for 3 to 4 years, it's $150 per year, and $5,000 for those employees 20 years or over. The only thing we did different with that is rather than annual payout, we made it part of an addition to their hourly pay. It's a separate line for hourly pay, and it's the exact amount they would have received. If they're a 20-plus year employee, that $5,000 is divided by the annual hours and paid as a weekly add-on to pay, rather than one lump sum annually. Article 22, bereavement. We've changed from immediate family members from 3 days to 5 days of bereavement leave, and for an extended family member from 1 day to 3 days. Insurance coverage, again commensurate with, I believe, the county standards for other agreements. Health insurance coverage will continue upon retirement with 15 years of continuous employment. And Article 31, currently staff receive, in the previous agreement, for many agreements, the staff receive $160 per year on their anniversary date to purchase uniforms. However, for the last many years, we supply all of our staff their uniforms. So this is literally goes in their pocket. To make better use of this money, we're converting it to an allowance to purchase shoes, safety shoes, through a program that they would have to use this money to purchase safety shoes through an agreement with a company like Shoes for Crews. If you've heard of that company, I don't know. And rather than giving the money in their paycheck, we would handle the purchasing of the shoes up to $160 a year.
Excuse me. What's the purpose of that?
I think it makes better use of that $160.
They're used for who?
I think for both, for us and the employee. There are some employees that, frankly, we see a lot of shoes being worn in our building that are just not safe for day-to-day wear, Crocs and other things like that. And these shoes are proven and guaranteed actually to prevent slips, trips, and falls within the workplace.
Well, I've been here for a lot of years. I never heard of shoes being a problem at the nursing home. And I just think it's wrong. My own opinion.
Yeah.
Good to know, thanks. Please
Well-
continue.
Sure. That's actually the major tenets of the contract.
Does anybody have any questions? Mr. Drake?
Hi, thanks for coming in. I just want to learn a little bit about it, so these questions are not intended to be anything other than informational. You mentioned the $5,000 longevity bonus. When I was reading our notes, it says here, for example, the CNA that's 21 years experience or more is $23.16 an hour. Is that as a result of the 5K being split up, or is that a bump because they're a 20-year employee plus the 5K?
Do you want to?
Yeah, so those entry scales that you have in there, those are new higher rates, right? If you have
$20,
experience in
yeah.
the community, you get to apply that and prove to us. So if you've been certified as a CNA for 20 plus years, your entry level would be the 2316.
Oh, okay.
The longevity is handled as a separate line item. So if you've been with us for 20 some odd years, you would be at that 2316,
Okay.
and then your longevity would be broken up into an hourly, well, a weekly rate, basically, and given to you as a weekly.
So it begets the question then, is there a pay scale then at the nursing home for the CNA, let's say has been with you for 20 years? Is that person now making a significantly higher rate than the new hire? That's what I'm getting at.
No.
it's a-
Well, potentially.
Potentially.
The way this will work, and it's going to be a bigger conversion in the first year, because one, we're converting from the 40 hours to 37 and a half hours. So what current employees, what we'll be doing with current employees, we'll be looking at their current hourly rate increasing it by 3%, then increasing it by another 6.7% to see what that number is. If that number is below the number in this, what you're referencing, they would get the higher of the two. From that point forward, those numbers are only used for hiring new staff at those levels.
So if I'm a CNA and I've been at the nursing home for a couple of decades, do I make more than the person hired last week generally?
Yes,
I do, okay. So there's a pay scale of some kind?
absolutely.
Okay, so these are really just new people. The other question I had for you was, so we go from 40 to 37 and a half, we keep the pay the same. How do we fill the gap of the 2.5 hours that we're paying for now? How do we get that labor from somebody else? How do we afford that?
The majority of that labor will continue because, again, most staff are already working those additional hours. One of the things that we really need to do is we rely very heavily on per diem staff, agency, outside agency staff, and overtime. I think when we start hiring more and more people to work regular hours rather than relying on those three components, it's going to increase the overall hours that are worked and hopefully lessen the amount of time that staff are working more than 40 hours or even more than 37 and a half hours.
So we're kind of taking a hit in a sense, and this is only financially, because we're gonna pay for 40, they're only gonna be working 37 and a half, correct? Or is that lunch, or is that 40 like minus lunch and the 37 and a half? How is that calculated?
They're in the build, so going to 37 and a half hours, they're actually in the building for 40 hours.
Okay.
Minus their half-hour lunch each day, so the worked hours are 37.5.
Okay.
They
Gotcha.
currently are in the building 42 and a half.
Right.
So currently they're 2.5 hours longer. So this is where, and I'm probably the only idiot in the room, but where does that 2.5 go in terms of fulfilling? So you're saying, okay, I'm gonna hire more staff, spread it, covering those hours that we need to do something for patients.
Right.
We're just gonna hire more staff. We're gonna eliminate some of the overtime and some of the per diems to do that. Is that essentially?
Yeah, and just to kind of further the conversation about that, we currently only employ about, let's say in the CNA category, nursing assistants, our largest component of our staffing in our building, we only employ about 42.5% of the number of staff that we need to staff the building. So we have a long way to go and to recruit, and I think with these numbers, we'll be able to get there.
Right. And so the last question was just to clarify, I think you may have already, the 5,000 longevity bonus, which we're giving to people who have been with us for 20 plus years, is just essentially being amortized in their paycheck now as part of their hourly wage. They don't have to wait till December to get it. It's just coming
Right.
in their hours.
Yeah, the numbers, the way it's been administered previously is on their anniversary month, they would get that payment. Now it's going to be, as you say, they're going to earn it week to week.
Right. And so if they go into overtime, it's not like they get additional longevity bonus. It's just, it's a sort of a stipend, not a week to week.
At the numbers that are in the
Gotcha.
contract.
Thanks for the
Anything
clarification.
else? Yes, somebody's in here. You done? All right, Sam and then Gil.
Thank you. Couple questions. One, I know it's been tough to hire people. What's the situation? What's the vacancy rate or the number of vacancies for various nursing positions? And how do these new pay rates compare to the private sector? And are you confident that this will, address those issues that we're having?
Yeah, so we currently, I don't have the exact numbers. Last I looked, we had 68 openings for nurse aides in our building, and I think it was 32 CNA openings in our building. So we have a lot of capacity to hire new staff. Those vacancies, again, are currently being covered by agency staff, overtime, and per diem staff. We have
Is that more expensive than hiring?
Quite a bit.
very, very much more. In fact, I have more per diem staff than I have regular full-time staff. That's because of some rates that were put into effect a couple of years ago. But per diem staff can only work a certain number of hours a week. And I stopped the hiring of per diem staff last September.
So are we raising the rates enough? I mean,
I believe so.
if
So
we
are we-
raise them
Yeah.
even more, would we potentially save money because then we would be able to cut back on the per diem staff and have full-time
I
employees?
think where these rates are is right within the market, the average in the market.
Okay.
But that, together with the fact that we now have free CDTA bus transportation, we have a daycare center. In the next couple of months, we're going to be applying to the state to run our own nurse aid training program for certification. I think that's going to really move the needle as far as the number of staff that we need to have. We also have to keep in mind that there's a New York State staffing mandate with a fine attached to it of $2,000 a day if you don't meet that staffing number. I just got and quarter by quarter, the state is giving us non-compliance, giving the whole industry non-compliance letters saying how non-compliant they were. At this point, they're back to first quarter of 2023. We were 83 days out of 90 non-compliant with the staffing mandate, with a potential fine of $2,000 a day. That being said, the state has yet to find any nursing home in the state, and I'm not sure when and if they're going to start. I think they're gathering data right now. But eventually, it is a law, and they will have to start enacting that fine mechanism.
Okay.
But to your point, I think we're right within the market. I think this will put us in a really good spot.
Okay, great. And then also just this 37 and a half hours, were they not getting lunch before? How? What
They were. So currently, this hasn't been enacted yet. Currently, they're in the building for 42 and a half hours a week, and they're getting half-hour lunch. They get a half-hour lunch and 2 15-minute breaks.
Okay.
So they're currently being paid for 40 hours a week, even though they're in the building for 42 and a half.
But now are they only going to be in the building for 40?
Correct.
Okay.
All set then?
Yes.
All right, Gil, then Jeff.
Yeah, you mentioned, do you know how many overall openings there are that can be filled at the nursing home?
The total number, all departments, the largest vacancy now is in the nursing department, and it's, we're somewhere around 90.
That's the nursing department. Any kind of number for overall? Or
Most of the other departments are pretty full. We probably have
We have
in the
some-
neighborhood of probably 10 or less in all the other departments combined.
Okay. If you had 5 people apply tomorrow for the nursing positions, how long before they'd be able to go on the payroll?
So we'll take all 5. And it's process-wise, it
Yeah.
takes a few weeks.
Process-wise, and there's many hurdles to this because there's also, in our industry, you have to have, certain vaccination, proof, you have to have that. So ideally, 2 weeks to 3 weeks. Sometimes that gets stretched out 4, 5, 6 weeks and can be, in that regard.
What is it more likely, 3 weeks or 6?
It's probably more like 4. If you had to average them out, it's within a month with making
And
time.
all 5 be on the payroll within 4 weeks?
Three out of 4, and then maybe 1 at 5 weeks then, if you're gonna average.
Is it slow on our part, or is it just slow on them people being
In our
qualified?
part, they could be on payroll in 2 weeks. Most of the delay is the prospective employee getting the necessary documentation they need to start. Vaccinations and several other
Background
documents.
check has to clear, stuff of that nature.
But the biggest complaints I ever hear from the public is how long it takes to finally get the job up there once they are qualified. But you don't seem that's a problem?
It does take more time than in other departments.
Okay, thank you.
You all set?
Yeah, I'm all set.
So it sounds like you're using, did I hear correctly, in the nursing department, you have less than 50% of ideal number of nurses on
Correct.
staff?
Correct.
And so.
Well,
you're-
being worked by regular full-time and part-time staff, we're currently reaching probably 80% of our requirement by the addition of the overtime and per diem.
Right, so you're making up the difference with overtime and with per diem. Do you think that, and so a per diem employee, is that a nurse who technically works for like a contractor or a vendor?
No, they're an employee of ours, but there's no commitment on their part. They're per diem, they work when we call them to work. Their only commitment, I believe, is 2 weekend shifts a month. Beyond that, they're on, not technically on call, but they're there to work when we need them to work. Unfortunately, because we don't have enough regular staff, we need them to work all the time, and they're working many, many hours, many more than actually they should be.
And are they paid more per hour than the regulars? Right, I don't know if regular staff is that the
Sure, so
right term?
currently, if we have a brand-new CNA start a full-time position, that line is currently at $17.60 an hour. If that same nurse aide is going to work per diem, they would have been hired at $28 an hour?
Yeah, so 28 was the final, and even some as high as 33, depending on.
But they don't get,
But they
don't get all the benefits.
No benefits,
Nothing.
right? No benefits.
No,
It's just
Okay.
salary,
right,
Just
every you work.
no shoes.
No bus
No
pass.
no shoes, they do get uniforms.
Yeah. Okay. Do you think that these changes to the collective bargaining agreement that we're going to do might help persuade some of the per diem people to become full-time?
I think
Or
there'll be-
regular, whatever the term is?
My goal and my hope is that because we're hiring more and more staff, they'll be getting less and less hours, and we'll decide to convert to a full-time position. There's no incentive for them to do that now because we need them 40 hours a week.
And you're getting paid more.
Once we hire more staff and being able to offer them less and less hours, my hope is that they'll convert to a full-time position
Great, thanks.
at a better rate than they would have gotten today.
Does anybody?
What's the math on that with since we pay benefits to our full-time employees and we don't to the per diem, it's still higher for the per diem though, even when you factor that in?
You get it gets very technical if like people are opting in or opting out of health insurance with buyouts and stuff
Yeah.
of that nature. And how much they're actually working, because if they are per diem or they're going to only work in a part-time fashion, that rate on their insurance is significantly higher. You don't get any subsidy. Well, you get a much lower subsidy for your health insurance if you're a part-time employee, at least in this collective bargaining agreement, and mostly I think in the rules and regs too. So at the time, it wasn't attractive when it was offered back before Mark came on board. It was attractive because we were in a pandemic and a health care emergency where we didn't have staff to complete what we needed to do. As we try to wean off of that, I think it's break even at best. I think it's even the collective bargaining agreement is a little bit of a savings.
So it's not, we're not gonna save a lot, but we might be saving some on the overtime piece as we hire more staff, it sounds like.
Oh, yeah.
Absolutely.
All right, thank you.
Mr. Grimm?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yeah, I need a little convincing that this is a fair deal for taxpayers. From what you said, you went from a 40-hour week to 37 and a half, but they're being paid based on the 40-hour week. So isn't that the same money for less productivity? And how is that fair to the taxpayer?
Technically, yes, but the starting rates, the rates are going up, in most cases, more than that math will give them anyway. For example, the CNA...
By rates, you mean the rate of pay?
The new rates that are in, like, for instance, a certified nursing assistant is currently at $17.16 an hour. When you add the 3% and the 6.7%, they're under $19 an hour. With the new rates in this contract to be commensurate with the market, they'll be getting $20 an hour anyway.
So where are you drawing the money from for this increased money? Where is this coming from? Are you eliminating vacant lines or anything like that?
So yes, this is funded through vacant lines here going forward, but during the budget process, we'll have to address this, a decreased use of temp help going forward into the coming years, and per diem is temp help. It's the line item, so would be reduced to cover that.
All right, well, yeah, so you're banking on the idea of getting more full-time employees. It has a service issue, of course, but also a financial issue.
Yeah, I mean, this is based on my experience of what we need to do to get the job done. We're currently spending over $3 million a year in overtime. We're currently spending close to $1 million an hour in agency staff that don't even work for us. Our per diem staff, I think it's $3.2 million. So with additional, more full-time staff, even at a higher rate of pay, when you start trickling off using agency and overtime and temporary staff, I think at the end of the day, it's going to save us money.
Yeah, see, I'm not clear about that, because if you're saying you're working 37 and a half hours, the number of hours is reduced, doesn't that make the staffing mandate more difficult, because each employee is carrying fewer hours?
More difficult in the sense that, it's only been about a year and a half that they were only even at 40 hours. So converting back to 37 and a half hours, I think is also going to help attract new staff. 37 and a half hours is the standard for a healthcare worker, particularly CNAs and LPNs.
All right, so you're taking a little bit of gamble, and that you can work the marketplace to your advantage, I guess.
It's educated gambling.
Have you done market research that would give you insight that that is going to be effective?
We did market research on developing the rate structure that we came to. So, when it came to $20 an hour, that is pretty much the mean as far as the hourly rates that are out there among our competitors.
I'm afraid we're at the end of our time, but does anybody else have any last quick questions?
Is the union okay with all this stuff?
Yeah, we have the signed MOU. Yeah.
Collective bargaining agreement. Okay, good, so,
Can I move to approve this?
yes, you may.
I do so.
Second by Mr. Ethier, all in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Motion passes, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Motion to adjourn?
Thanks, Tom.
These two, all in favor? We're two.